Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Our Take, a podcast you can trust. I'm your host, LukeMan97, and today we're going to be talking about what happens when water becomes corrupted with something. But more specifically, we're going to be discussing the Flint water crisis that started in 2014 and went until 2019. So, basically, before the crisis started, Flint received its water. This is the city of Flint, Michigan, if you guys are wondering. They received their water from the Detroit water system, which took their water from Lake Huron. So this water was fine, everything was fine. But then they hired a new city manager in Flint, and they realized that the Detroit water system was costing them a lot of money. So they decided to switch their water source to the Flint River instead. And basically what happened is Detroit terminated its water service contract. They finally switched to the Flint River. And although it wasn't announced until 2016, in June of 2014, an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease began. And if you guys are wondering what that disease is, it's very similar to pneumonia, where the symptoms include like coughing, shortness of breath, stuff like that. And people think now that outbreak was caused because there was bacteria from the Flint River coming through those pipes. Eventually, on August 14, the city announced a water boiling advisory, which means that you should boil your water to reduce bacteria, which is honestly kind of you don't hear that very often these days because most water is very well filtered. But the advisory was lifted only 6 days later on August 20. Second warning was issued in September. In October, the Flint's General Motors truck assembly plant discontinued using the Flint tap water because the high levels of chloride were corroding and rusting their engine parts because they had to be washed first, I guess. In 2015, in January, city officials declined the offer to reconnect Lake Huron water. So they had an offer to reconnect it, but it would cost more money than the Flint River, and so they declined the offer, which seems like money drives everything these days, so that doesn't surprise me. Then the mayor tried boosting people's confidence by drinking the Flint tap water on local television to try to dispel their fears, but the residents began complaining of how the water was discolored and smelled and tasted really bad, and so they began bringing it in for the officials to see, and that did not really help though at first. But then they began testing people's blood and found that a lot of lead was present in their blood. Why would there be a lot of lead in their blood, you might be asking? Well, let's explain that. So basically, Flint is a very old city, and most of its pipes and piping system for the water was installed between 1901 and 1920, so very, very old, maybe like 100 years ago almost. And those pipes, back then they made pipes out of lead because they didn't realize how toxic it could be. And lead pipes are okay as long as there's a proper bacteria lining. What is that? Well, basically, a proper bacteria lining this doesn't just happen in lead pipes, this happens in all pipes, where a bacteria lining, and this is good bacteria, forms on the inside of the pipes, and it makes it so the water doesn't really have to touch the pipes as much, it just goes through. And that was fine when they had Detroit water, but for some reason when they connected to the Flint River as their water source, the pipes, it broke down the bacteria lining in the pipes, meaning the water began to touch the actual pipes themselves, which were lead. So lead began getting into the water, and so people were drinking that, and people's blood lead levels were elevating much beyond what they should be. Now, how could this have been fixed? Well, I'm not sure, but I know that the Flint River had something to do with why that began corroding the bacteria off the pipes. Now, afterwards, they have blamed ex-Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. They blamed him after the fact for mishandling the situation, hiring the wrong city managers, etc. They blamed him for it. and they also blamed city employees for not noticing it sooner. But they did do well because during the crisis, they began supplying people with bottled water so they didn't have to drink the corrupted water of it. I think eventually they were forced to switch back to Detroit water so that their water would be good again, because for some reason the Flint River just wasn't working out. It was probably too polluted. Flint River became too polluted for them to use. And also they began replacing pipes. And it says here on nrdc.org, it says that I'm looking for it. Anyways, they replaced a lot of pipes between like 2016 and 2020, I believe. Yes, they replaced about, I think, over 1,000 pipes, and made sure all the copper ones were still good. They replaced as many lead ones as they could. It says here that pure lead pipes, solder, and fittings were banned from U.S. water systems in 1986, but obviously they're not just going to remove them, so they didn't, they banned them to be like put in new, but they're not going to make you remove them and dig them up. But after this water crisis, they definitely learned that lead pipes were not good. And just so you guys know, that bacteria lining on the inside of pipes I was talking about, that doesn't form on just lead pipes. That forms on all kinds of pipes, whether it's plastic, metal, lead, copper, any kinds of pipes. It's just lead pipes. If that bacteria wears away, it becomes very dangerous because lead can get into the water from the pipes. The pipes can basically contaminate the water that runs through them. So that's why these days they use plastic pipes, and that's about all they use. And they use some cement ones and metal ones, but no more lead, because they realized how dangerous that was in the 80s. Well, we have learned a very valuable lesson from this water crisis, though, to pay more attention to residents when they say the water looks very bad. And also we've learned to replace lead pipes with new kinds of pipes, as they can be very dangerous to water sources. Hope this video was informational to you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, turn on notifications, and I'll be back in the next one.